levels of implementation. That's what's important. The personal level probably exists for everyone. I haven't come across any companies that don't use ChatGPT. I don't know. Of course, I'm not talking about some specific countries, but in our more familiar ones. The second level is the level of automation. This is when we take some process that we want. Well, basically you automate the process that annoys you the most, right? Something bothers you there, calling clients, writing emails, and so on. And you automate it. When there is an old operating system, right, your business system, you take any one process and put AI on it. Agents, LLMs, something like that, and you automate something there. For many companies, well, that's the only way because they already have a lot of things built up. And, well, doing AI first is very difficult, right? Because so much already exists there. And then comes the next level. This is the so-called AI first. What is AI first? AI first is when AI is used in key business processes. So if you take a business model, it has a core, right? The main processes that create value and, well, generate revenue accordingly, right? They affect the money, right? I'll show you with some examples now. And so AI first is when these processes are actually, it's more accurate to say not automated, but rather transformed with the help of artificial intelligence. Well, and the next level, no one has seen it yet. It's like sex when you were a kid, right? Agency, that's like autonomous management. Basically, everything is on autopilot. How does the traditional business model differ? The one that most of our classic businesses use. Decisions are made by people. Processes are tailored to limitations and scale. In short, we can't scale what we have without increasing the complexity of the business, right? The complexity of the business grows in direct proportion to its scale. Why? Because each person, how many billions is it? A lot, basically, billions of neurons. Yeah. They all interact with each other very intensely, and well, as a result, it's very hard to predict. And when we build on people, you see, the human factor comes in, increased complexity and increased costs. So the more people there are, the more complicated it gets. The more complicated it gets, the more money it costs, right? Well, that's just to put it simply. Why is AI first so great, right? It would be good because in key business processes, at the core of the business model, it replaces this with AI. And accordingly, the increase in complexity doesn't happen in the same way. It can happen what's called exponential company growth without an increase in complexity or the number of people, right? So-called AI-first companies, AI native, as they say, are those companies that have turnovers of millions, even hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe not billions, but millions, hundreds of millions. And they are managed by just 5 to 10 people. Processes are built around data, not roles. This is very important. So, how is it structured in our traditional business model? There's this department, there's that department, every department has its own data stored somewhere, right? So for example, the marketing department owns its data, the sales department has its own, and accounting has theirs. And basically they interact somehow via email or say through corporate messengers. This is called, in AI first theory, a siloed model. They're like those pipes you've seen at, agricultural companies, those big pipes. Each pipe and things are thrown in there separately, right? AI first says that all data should be stored in one place. There should be a certain interface for interacting with this data, right? And each of these departments, roles, or people has access according to their competencies, roles, and so on, and can obtain any of this data. Moreover, the data that is generated as a result of their work goes back there, thus enriching or self-training the system. That's the key difference, right? Any traditional business model exists in such a way that it does not self-learn because the knowledge remains in each silo, in marketing, in sales, and so on. Everyone learns something there, something in their own head. Then the person leaves and everything dies, right? AI first says, no, everything goes into one pile and we train on every fact of reality, every fact of actuality. So this case, I really like it. It was a tree trainer, a regular trainer. It's a commodity product. Well, one of those of which there are 1 million. They were selling them, competing. Well, and the business model wasn't very good. What did they do? They had equipment sales, a one-time income. They sold it once. They created sort of their own operating system, which allowed them to sell people not the trainer itself, but the time spent using the trainer. In other words, the training sessions, right? Each trainer collected data, transmitted signals, and AI managed this process. So basically, everyone who used these, they introduced some kind of subscription for using the trainer. And in this way, based on the data they received from users' workouts, they kept creating new and new digital products. Yes, this operating system that trained them, right? And in this way, they moved away from that key limitation of one-time income and selling equipment. They stopped making money from selling equipment and started earning from selling a digital product. In other words, they removed the key limitation from the traditional business model and shifted to AI first. This is a well-known Ukrainian product. I don't know if you've heard of it, probably Leaky24. Well, it's basically Uber. So what's the essence of such product? Well, they're not tied to physical assets, right? They operate based on demand forecasting. And I know that they were doing this long before generative artificial intelligence came along. So what do? They take data from pharmacies, take data from clients and provide a service. Yes, they take from pharmacies, sell to clients, and develop dynamic delivery routes. That's something a pharmacy, can't do universally, right? It just sits and waits for a customer to come in. In this way, they created, so essentially the core of their product is not selling medicine, right? But selling delivery, yes, that is delivery of this to the client. So they shifted the key value of the product from delivery to a digital model. Prom.ai. By the way, they used to be kind of struggling. I remember when they were still very lackluster, and then they reworked their model. All their ranking, by the way, this is a very popular topic. Ranking of products and sellers is done through AI. They fully manage this ranking through AI. Personalized recommendations for SMEs and automatic ad management. They did the same thing that Google has been doing for a long time. They manage advertising in the same way, meaning they provide a key service. Their core service is, so to speak, managed through AI. What did companies have? I analyzed this, or rather not just me, I analyzed the reports from all these MTIs and so on. What did they have when they managed to successfully transform? The presence of up-to-date formalized processes, roles, and areas of responsibility. That is, you can't improve anything if you don't know what to improve, right? Who are we going to improve and for what purpose? It's unclear, right? Structured operational and management data within a unified information framework. Well, that's the same thing, yes. In order for us to manage data better, we need to structure it. Focus on specific bottlenecks and measurable business impact. That is, they didn't start with everything. They looked at the business model and identified its so-called bottleneck. Now I'll explain this in detail. In other words, none of those who succeeded did everything at once, hey, let's make chatbots for support right now, They thought, but why? What is our business's key constraint? Where can we have the greatest impact on efficiency, on profit, basically, in the end? AI became part of the operating model, not just a separate tool. Well, that's what we mean when we talk about AI first. Support for AI transformation at the CEO level, that's something else entirely. If the owner and CEO, the leaders, don't support it, if they look at you and say, go talk to my IT guy in a sweater with pills on it, then that's it. You can forget about it. You just sit down and go home.